Well, hello again, everyone. Myself, Utpal Shashanka Boro, a student of Lakhimpur College of Veterinary Science, shall be discussing today on the topic canine parvovirus, prepared by my colleagues Sunaina Ghosh, Suprativ Sharma, Susmita Das, and Vanessa Hojai. Now, before we begin, this is a disclaimer that this presentation has been prepared to the best of the abilities of the undergrad students of Lakhimpur College of Veterinary Science to provide as much accurate information as possible. We do not, however, encourage people to use the information provided in this presentation for any scientific work without cross-verifying the data. This is strictly for educational purpose and not for commercial use. Further, the information provided in this presentation should not be used for treatment without consulting a registered practitioner. With that being said, let's move forward. Now coming to introduction of canine parvovirus. So what is parvovirus? Well, the canine parvovirus infection is a highly contagious viral illness that affects dogs, preferably young dogs. The virus manifests itself into two different forms. The intestinal form, characterized by vomition, diarrhea, lack of appetite, and the less common form, which is the cardiac form that affects the heart muscles of very young puppies, often less than 8 weeks old, leading to death. Causes for concern. The canine parvovirus has a mutation rate that is very fast, and hence this viral disease has no known cure. Further, the pathogenicity of the disease is amazingly quick and the infection spreads over countries and continents, the manifestation of it being enteritis and myocarditis with high morbidity rate of up to 100% and frequent mortality up to 10%. And so, the treatment is focused on curing the symptoms and also preventing the secondary bacterial infections done in a hospital environment. The key to recovery is intensive fluid therapy and systemic support. Now coming on to etiology of canine parvovirus. The canine parvovirus CPV is a highly contagious and relatively common cause of acute infectious gastrointestinal illness in young and unvaccinated dogs. Although its exact origin is unknown, it is believed to have arisen from feline panleukopenia virus. The canine parvovirus type 2 CPV2 that belongs to the genus Protoparvovirus, a member of Parvoviridae family according to the International Committee of Taxonomy of Viruses, is responsible for causing the disease. It is a single-stranded DNA virus of diameter 18 to 24 nanometer in diameter. The virus lacks envelope and essential lipids. It is icosahedral in shape. The virus can withstand high temperatures and is resistant to ether and chloroform and stable at pH range of 3 to 9. Now, the viral infection in canine population was first recognized in 1977-1978 that caused parvovirus enteritis or myocarditis in USA. It has got close antigenic relationship with feline panleukopenia virus. There are two types of canine parvovirus, CPV1 and CPV2. In the 1970s, CPV1 was more common and currently CPV2 is the dominant strain. Now in North America, clinical disease is largely attributed to CPV2B. However, infection with newer and equally virulent strain of CPV2C is increasingly becoming common. Now, it has been postulated that the recent infection in dog may be caused by mutation of the virus of mink or cat, as shown in the figure. Now, mode of transmission. The virus is shed in the feces of infected dogs within 4 to 5 days of exposure, often before the clinical signs develop, throughout the period of illness and for 10 days after clinical recovery. As shown in the timeline, you can see day 0 is the point of exposure, and from day 1 to around day 5 viremia is seen, and onset of clinical sign from day 4 onwards. But shedding of virus into the feces begins before the clinical signs develop at around day 3 and goes up to day 12. Now this diagram should provide a better understanding. On day 1, there is ingestion of minimal amount of infectious parvovirus. By day 2, viral replication in oropharynx and then spread via bloodstream to lymph nodes, bone marrow and intestine. By day 3, there is enormous amount of viral shedding in the feces, and from day 3 to day 5, there is marked viremia, usually but not always manifested by intestinal disease, that is the intestinal form. From day 4 to day 10, clinical sign begins after exposure. Some dogs can continue to shed the virus 3 weeks after the onset of clinical sign. Possible shedding of non-infective parvovirus due to vaccination with modified live parvovirus vaccine 4 to 10 days previously, and false positive ELISA is also possible. From day 6 to day 10, amount of parvovirus begins shed by an infected dog begins to decline. From day 6 to 10 days post-infection, chances of false negative ELISA is possible when fecal sample is collected during day 6 to 10. Now, after day 12, the virus rarely is recovered in the feces. Now, the virus is highly contagious and infection is acquired through direct oral or nasal contact with virus-containing feces, or indirectly through contact with virus-contaminated fomites. Example, environment, personal equipment, kennel equipments, etc. As you can see in the picture, the infected dog has started to excrete virus in the feces, and the new dog, the young dogs that are particularly susceptible to the disease, get infection from sniffing it by oral or nasooral route, and the virus starts multiplying in the intestine. In addition, people, instruments, equipments in veterinary facilities or grooming operations, insects, and rodents can serve as vectors for canine parvovirus. Given here is a chart showing how parvovirus spreads. When an unvaccinated young pup of 6 weeks to 6 months old comes in contact with a parvo-infected dog or its feces, it can acquire the canine parvovirus through oronasal route and become infected. Once it starts shedding large quantities of virus in the feces, the owner may step on the feces or the pup's vomit and take his or her pup to a vet clinic where they both act as a fomite to other young unvaccinated pups visiting the clinics. Or the kennel bedding material, etc. may act as a source of canine parvovirus infection if not properly cleaned and disinfected with 2% formalin, 2% sodium hydroxide or 2% sodium hypochlorite. Dogs may carry the virus on their hair coat for extended periods. The incubation period of CPV2 is around 4 to 14 days. The virus survives outside its host for up to 6 months. The host vitality, surrounding environment, and the virulence of the virus are the factors associated with the development of the disease, in addition to individual patient. Now, incidence. Dogs of all age group can be affected. Young ones of age 6 weeks to 6 months of old, unvaccinated or incompletely or partially vaccinated dogs are most susceptible. On sufficient colostrum ingestion, puppies born to a dam with CPV antibodies are protected from the infection for the first 2 weeks of life. However, susceptibility to the infection increases as the maternally acquired antibody starts to decrease. Stress conditions like from weaning, overcrowding, malnutrition, etc., or parasitic and bacterial infection makes the case more severe. Now, the parvo survival rate in case of treated and untreated. For early treatment, the 80% of the animals recover if treated early, and appropriately. Now, in case of untreated animals, usually 90% of them dies. Coming to breed susceptibility, all breeds of dogs are susceptible to the disease, although the mixed breeds are described to be less susceptible than pure breeds. Rottweilers, Doberman Pinschers, English Springer Spaniels, American Pit Bull, Terriers, German Shepherds are the pure breeds that have been reported with high risk of canine parvovirus enteritis form infection. Coming on to pathophysiology of canine parvovirus, entry of virus and initial replication. The virus enters mostly through fecal-oral route. Initial viral replication is in the lymphoid tissue of the oropharynx, including tonsils, retropharyngeal or local lymph nodes. Hematogenous dissemination takes place and viremia occurs. Which tissues gets affected the most? The virus has affinity towards rapidly dividing cells. Lymphoid tissue, intestinal epithelium, bone marrow, and heart are mostly affected in puppies. As you can see, initially, the canine parvovirus replicates in the lymphoid tissues and through blood, after multiplying, is disseminated through blood to the small intestinal epithelium, bone marrow, and heart. Upon reaching there is replication and ultimately CPV preferentially infects and destroys rapidly dividing cells of small intestine, intestinal crypt epithelium, lymphatopoietic tissue and bone marrow. There is destruction of the intestinal crypt epithelium that results in the epithelial necrosis, villus atrophy, impaired absorptive capacity and disrupted gut barrier function with potential for bacterial translocation and bacteremia. Lymphopenia and neutropenia develop secondary to destruction of hematopoietic progenitor cells in the bone marrow and lymphatopoietic tissue like thymus, lymph node, etc., and are further exacerbated by increase in the systemic demand for leukocytes. Hence, the animal suffers from immunodeficiency and there is chances of secondary bacterial and parasitic attacks. Infection in utero in pups of less than 8 weeks old or born to unvaccinated dams without naturally occurring antibodies can also result in myocardial infarction, necrosis and myocarditis. Myocarditis presenting as acute cardiopulmonary failure or delayed progressive cardiac failure can be seen with or without signs of enteritis. Now, there are different forms of infection. They are in utero, neonatal and postnatal. Now, in case of in utero infection, as mentioned before, the canine parvovirus has great tropism, or it is likely to multiply in cells that are undergoing rapid division. So, it has great affinity towards fetal tissue. So, in case of in utero infection, the infection begins in utero and completes in the first 2 weeks of age. There is generalized form of infection and hence it results in acute death that occurs within 10 days of age. In case of neonatal infection, it occurs in pups less than 8 weeks of age. It results in myocarditis, and if the pup is less than 3 months of old, the myocarditis results in cardiac arrhythmia and sudden death. If, however, the pup is able to survive till the age of 3 months of age, or initially when the myocarditis started, the pup was older than 3 months of age, it results in chronic myocardial fibrosis, resulting in cardiomyopathy, congestive heart failure, pulmonary edema, eventually leading to death. In case of postnatal infection, it occurs in pups of 8 weeks of age and above. The virus replicates in the tonsils, lymph nodes, oropharynx. Then once replicated, results in viremia free in plasma and goes to rapidly dividing cells of intestinal epithelial cells, lymphoid tissue, bone marrow, lungs, liver and kidney. Now once it reaches the bone marrow and lymphoid tissue, It destroys the progenitor cells of the bone marrow, leading to lymphopenia and neutropenia, and there is immunodeficiency, thymic atrophy, generalized lymphodepletion of spleen and lymph node, making the animal vulnerable to secondary bacterial or parasitic infections. Now, what happens to the bone marrow and lymphoid tissue? Well, there is destruction of the hematopoietic progenitor cells in the bone marrow and lymphoid tissue by the virus replication. Example, the lymphoid tissue being example thymus, lymph node, etc. The virus replicates in all these tissues, resulting in panleukopenia, which results in reduction in the number of all types of leukocytes in blood, making the animal severely immunodeficient, making it vulnerable to secondary bacterial and parasitic attacks. Now, in case of intestinal infection, the virus replicates in the intestinal crypt or the villi, resulting in necrosis, due to which there is increase in permeability and decreased absorption of essential nutrients and minerals, and increased permeability to bacteria and other parasites. As a result, there is enteritis and diarrhea. In severe form, it results in secondary infection and sepsis of such as bacterial infections, and there is disseminated intravascular coagulation, resulting in severe dehydration and leading to death. Now, if the enteritis was mild, the animal may have recovered. Now, what happens to the small intestine? In small intestine, due to extreme damage to the villi, there is hemorrhagic enteritis, seen in case of, as a clinical sign, bloody diarrhea, and disrupted gut barrier that results in decrease in absorption of nutrients and also entry of bacteria, toxemia, other things, and parasite to the body, and impaired absorptive capacity, hence clinical sign observed as anorexia and inappetence. Now, damage to the intestinal lining results in hemorrhagic enteritis. There is disrupted gut barrier function that leads to bacteria translocation and bacteremia. Now, what are the clinical signs or manifestations? There are two forms of clinical manifestations of canine parvovirus mostly. There is the myocarditis form, which is a bit rare and occurs in pups of up to 8 weeks of age, and the enteritis form, which occurs usually pups of older than 8 weeks of age. Now, the enteritic form, clinical signs seen are lethargy and depression, vomition, difficulty in breathing or gasping of air, lack of appetite, anorexia. There is severe weight loss. There is severe bloody diarrhea. Now, the diarrhea is watery or semi-solid, brownish feces mixed with mucus, followed by fetid hemorrhagic diarrhea, as you can see in the picture on the right. Since there is damage to the intestinal lining, there is hemorrhagic enteritis leading to endotoxemia, and blood and protein also leaks, leading to bloody diarrhea. Now, vomition seen as frothy yellowish vomitus, and fever, warm ears, possible red eyes, shivering may be present, which subsides with advancement. Fever is usually around 104 degree Fahrenheit. Lack of appetite. As a result of constant vomiting and diarrhea, there is animal refuses to accept food. Now, there is lethargy due to continuous loss of nutrients. Animal is less energetic and inactive and unresponsive. Dehydration and weight loss. Severe dehydration and weight loss due to excessive fluid loss and electrolyte in vomiting and due to vomiting and diarrhea. In case of myocarditis form, this form, clinical signs are not so apparent. The heart muscles get damaged and affected. The animals show circulatory failure, respiratory problems and pulmonary edema may be seen. Most animals die due to cardiogenic shock. Coming on to diagnosis of canine parvovirus. The clinical symptoms are quite useful in making a tentative diagnosis, but for confirmation, laboratory diagnosis is to be made. Following methods are used: animal inoculation test, serum neutralization test, isolation of virus. The viral antigen can be demonstrated in the feces since massive quantities of virus are shed in the feces during acute illness. Hemagglutination test, hemagglutination inhibition test, fluorescence antibody test, ELISA, and hematology is useful. The packed cell volume may be decreased due to intestinal hemorrhage or may be increased due to dehydration. Leukopenia due to lymphopenia and granulocytopenia develops. Abdominal radiograph for gas and fluid distension may be evident, and contrast radiography may show corrugation and prolonged transit time. There is, in case of serological biomarkers, low serum albumin, high serum C-reactive protein, which occurs due to inflammatory bowel disease or disorders that cause swelling and gastrointestinal bleeding. There is low serum thyrotoxin, high serum cortisol. Then miscellaneous biomarkers are also there, such as extensive ultrasonic intestinal image and positive for SIRS. Now coming on to diagnosis. Diagnosis is broadly divided into field diagnosis and laboratory diagnosis. Field diagnosis gives us a tentative diagnosis whether the animal is suffering from canine parvovirus or not. But in order to confirm it, we need laboratory diagnosis. Now, field diagnosis consists of vaccination history, whether the animal has been vaccinated for canine parvovirus or not. If yes, then we can suspect another disease, and if not, we can suspect for canine parvovirus. Clinical signs such as bloody diarrhea, vomition, inappetence, myocarditis are helpful. Post-mortem findings such as thickened or discolored intestinal wall, watery mucoid or hemorrhagic intestinal contents is tentative to canine parvovirus infection. Now for laboratory diagnosis, the samples to be collected, whether live or dead, include fecal samples and fecal swab because, as mentioned before, the canine parvovirus is excreted in enormous quantity through the excreta of the host. Also, intestine, intestinal contents and cardiac tissue in case of the cardiogenic form of the canine parvovirus, the tissue sample collected is helpful in diagnosing whether the animal is infected with canine parvovirus or not. Now, laboratory tests include viral detection or antigen detection such as hemagglutination test, hemagglutination inhibition test, polymerase chain reaction, ELISA, which is rapid and simple and sensitively used routine diagnostic tool for detection of CPV antigen. Commercially available diagnostic toolkits such as Rapigen Parvo antigen test is available, which is based on immunochromatographic assay of CPV antigen in canine feces. The sample is stored at 2 to 8 degrees Celsius for 48 hours, and the kit comprises of 10 pouches, each containing one test device, 10 disposable fecal and collection device, each containing extraction buffer, 10 swabs, and an instruction for use. Hematological test and biochemical test. Hematological test will indicate panleukopenia, leukopenia and neutropenia due to the virus replicating in the bone marrow and destroying the progenitor cells for leukocytes. And biochemical test indicate low serum albumin level due to loss of blood due to gastrointestinal hemorrhage, high serum C-reactive protein or CRP due to inflammatory bowel disease disorders which causes swelling and gastrointestinal bleeding, high serum level of tumor necrosis factor, and low serum level of cholesterol due to decrease in the nutritional uptake due to gastrointestinal hemorrhage. Cultivation of virus can be done by collecting the fecal sample and culturing it on cell culture such as CRFK cell line, which is short for Crandall-Rees feline kidney cell line, which is an immortalized cell line, A72 cell line, and MDCK cell line, which is short for Madin-Darby canine kidney cell line. Diagnostic imaging such as abdominal radiography, gas and fluid distension can be evident from abdominal radiograph. Contrast radiography may show corrugation and prolonged transit time. ECG changes such as non-specific ST segment T wave changes, sinus tachycardia are evident in case of myocarditis, which is seen in case of myocardial form of canine parvovirus infection. Necropsy findings such as intestinal crypt cell necrosis, a thickened and discolored intestinal wall, watery mucoid or hemorrhagic intestinal contents, edema and congestion of abdominal and thoracic lymph nodes, thymic atrophy, and in case of canine parvovirus myocarditis version, there is pale streak in the myocardium upon necropsy. Now coming on to differential diagnosis of canine parvovirus from canine distemper. In case of canine distemper, there is biphasic fever and respiratory nervous sign which are absent in parvovirus infection. In case of infectious canine hepatitis, there is conjunctivitis which is evident but not so in case of canine parvovirus. For canine coronavirus, respiratory signs and dyspnea are more prominent. In case of salmonellosis, fever, pneumonia may be evident, and upon isolation from fecal sample, salmonella is detected. In case of hemorrhagic gastroenteritis, there is sudden onset and very high amount of blood is found in the feces, and food history will help in the differential diagnosis from parvovirus. And in case of toxicosis, food history, tremors, increase and decrease heart rate, excessive salivation, etc. can be seen along with gastrointestinal signs. Coming on to treatment of canine parvovirus. Now, in case of treatment for canine parvovirus, there is no specific treatment. There is only symptomatic treatment. Now, dogs suspected or confirmed to have canine parvovirus should be immediately isolated from other dogs to prevent the spread of infection. And the treatment is based upon supportive care, including fluid and electrolyte therapy, nutritional support, antiemetics, and antibiotics. The main goal of treatment for canine parvovirus enteritis includes restoration of fluid, electrolyte, and metabolic abnormalities, and prevention of secondary bacterial infection. In the absence of significant vomiting, oral electrolyte solutions could be offered. Now for fluid therapy, DNS, NSRL, that is dextrose normal saline, and Ringer's lactate can be given. These are crystalloids. They are given to restore the fluid and electrolyte losses. Now DNS is not to be administered when the animal is having fever. Now broad spectrum antibiotics can be used. Beta-lactam antibiotics such as ampicillin or cefazolin at the dose rate of 22 mg per kg body weight intravenously 3 times a day will provide appropriate gram-positive and anaerobic coverage. For severe clinical signs or marked neutropenia, additional gram-negative coverage by using enrofloxacin 5 to 10 mg per kg body weight per day intramuscular or intravenous, or gentamicin at a dose rate of 9 to 12 mg per kg body weight per day intravenous is indicated. Aminoglycoside antibiotics must not, however, be administered until dehydration has been corrected and fluid therapy re-established. Enrofloxacin has been associated with articular cartilage damage in rapidly growing dogs of 2 to 8 months old, and hence should be discontinued if the pain or swelling develops. Second or third generation cephalosporins like cefoxitin, ceftazidime, cefovecin, others can also be considered for their relatively wide spectrum of activity against gram-positive and gram-negative bacteria. Antibiotic therapy is typically only needed for short duration, usually 5 to 7 days. Now, metronidazole can also be used at a dose rate of 20 mg per kg body weight per day intravenously in divided doses. Antiemetics are indicated if there is vomiting. Ondansetron can be given at a dose rate of 0.5 mg per kg body weight intravenously, followed by 0.5 mg per kg body weight infusion for 6 hours, or metoclopramide may be given at 0.3 mg per kg body weight subcut twice daily or 1 to 2 mg per kg per day at constant rate infusion. Now, to correct the gastric problem, proton pump inhibitors like pantoprazole at the dose rate of 0.7 to 1 mg per kg body weight intravenously can be given over 15 minutes every 24 hours, or omeprazole at the dose rate of 0.5 to 1.5 mg per kg body weight intravenously can be given once a day. Apart from that, H2 blocker, that is histamine blocker, H2 blocker ranitidine can be given at a dose rate of 0.5 mg per kg body weight intravenously or subcut every 8 to 12 hours to correct the gastric problem. Hemostats can also be considered for inhibiting the intestinal bleeding, such as botropes and ethiamycilate. Now, antidiarrheals are not recommended because retention of intestinal contents within the compromised gut in case of enteric form of canine parvovirus increases the risk of bacterial translocation and systemic complications. Now, a successful protocol for outpatient treatment of canine parvovirus enteritis version consists of using meropetent, which is an antiemetic, at 1 mg per kg body weight per day subcut, followed by cefovecin, which is cephalosporin, at 8 mg per kg body weight subcut every 14 days, and crystalloid fluids 3 times daily, which gives a survival rate of around 80%. Coming on to prevention and control, we can prevent parvo by vaccinating the animal, isolation of sick animal, and decontaminating the environment where the sick animal was residing in. Vaccination: puppies need a series vaccine starting at 6 to 8 weeks old, and dogs continue protection with a triennial booster. Isolation: quarantine the infected dogs immediately and keep isolated until fecal test comes negative. We have to decontaminate the area where the animal resides and purchase and use products that kill parvovirus and disinfect daily and at least 3 times after full recovery. Vaccination: we have to vaccinate all dogs and pups over 4 weeks of age and revaccinate the pups every 2 weeks until over 16 weeks of age. Revaccinate the dogs who were sick on intake. The vaccination with modified live vaccine is recommended at 6 to 8 weeks of age, 10 to 12 weeks of age, and 14 to 16 weeks of age. Now, vaccination schedule according to World Small Animal Veterinary Association guideline include for canine parvovirus primary vaccination at 6 to 8 weeks of age, then the first booster at 10 to 12 weeks of age, and second booster at 14 to 16 weeks of age, then revaccinate 1 year later, then go on for revaccination every 3 years. Now, some locally available vaccine brands include Megavac C, then Novivac and Canigen from Virbac. They all are combined vaccines, DHPPI, which stands for distemper, then canine hepatitis virus caused by adenovirus, and P for parvovirus and PI for parainfluenza. Now, 2 types of vaccines, inactivated vaccine and modified live vaccines, are commercially available. The inactivated vaccines provide immunity for up to 1 year and is safe to use in pregnant bitches. The modified live vaccine provide longer lasting immunity, but it is not pregnancy safe. Now, because of potential damage to myocardial cells by CPV, inactivated rather than live attenuated modified live vaccines are indicated in pregnant dogs or colostrum deprived puppies vaccinated before 6 to 8 weeks of age. Now, parvovirus infected isolation. To minimize the risk, a well-stocked separate ward or cage in a low-use visible area should be available for contagious patients. Given here is a schedule of parvo quarantine. Exposure upon first contact, then in incubation, contagious 3 to 5 days after first contact, we start quarantine when the symptoms are shown like highly contagious 5 to 10 days after first contact. Then up until the recovery, we have to keep the animal in quarantine. Now, in case the animal has completely recovered, the dog tests negative for parvovirus, and then we can put the animal out of quarantine. Now, DA2PP, which is given here in the picture, stands for distemper, adenovirus type 2, and parainfluenza and parvovirus vaccine. That is DA2PP at or prior to intake starting at 4 to 6 weeks of age is given, and for adults, booster after 14 days, and for puppies, booster repeated every 14 days until 16 weeks of old is given. DAP is to be administered at 8, 12 and 16 weeks of age, and booster after 1 year. Now, disinfection of the contaminated zones. Disinfection, a thorough disinfection of the premises in case of disease outbreak is a must. Effective disinfectants include 1.1% sodium hypochlorite, 2% formalin. Fumigation with formaldehyde gas where feasible should be done. Cleaners that will kill parvovirus include sodium chloride such as perfumicide, sodium hypochlorite solutions, liquid chlorine, Clorox bleach, pool sanitizers, potassium peroxymonosulfate such as trifectant, Vercon, and accelerated hydrogen peroxide such as Rescue NSL helps in disinfecting the contaminated sites. Deworming. Unvaccinated puppies have very low immunity to parvoviral infection, and if the animal has intestinal worms, the immunity is further lowered, hence deworming should be done. Now, we have to keep the dog close in public as parvovirus is a very resistant virus and survives environment for a long period of time, and normal healthy dog may get infection by simply sniffing contaminated soil or leaves. Now, tips for owners. Vaccinate your dogs properly and limit unvaccinated dog exposure. When you see signs like diarrhea, vomiting, anorexia, contact your nearest veterinarian. Stop complete oral feeding of solid food till the symptoms subsides, as directed by the veterinarian. Maintain proper hygiene and disinfect the area where the dog is kept. Maintenance of owner's hygiene should also be a key point, as he or she may spread the infection as a form of fomite to other healthy dogs. Follow-up visit to veterinarian is encouraged, and maintain proper diet once the animal attain its normal health condition. Now, these were the reference of today's presentation, and that's it. We hope it was informative. Thank you.